Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly past the paper screens of a samurai household, just as the sky blushes with early morning haze. Steam curls from rice pots, sandals slap against packed earth floors, and someone, yep, it's you, is already elbow deep in barley. Because tonight, you're not a warrior. You're the one who keeps warriors alive. You're the cook. You're up before the sun. Always. There's no roosters here, those are for farms and fables, but you can hear the shrill call of a nightjar outside, and that's enough to make your eyes pop open. Your futon is stiff. Your back's stiffer. And your day? Let's just say, if you mess up the morning miso, you probably won't survive to burn the afternoon tofu. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You groan as you slide open the fusuma, tiptoeing past sleeping attendants curled like shrimp on tatami mats. In the narrow servants' corridor, the air is already thick with soot and smoke. You can barely see, but your hands move on memory, grabbing kindling, brushing aside yesterday's ash, and getting the coals to glow without drawing too much attention. This isn't a kitchen the way you're used to thinking about kitchens. It's a low, smoky chamber with maybe one window, no ventilation, and more bugs than guests. Everything smells like fish, and wood, and something vaguely fermented you don't remember leaving out. That's your world: smoke, sweat, rice, and risk. Your lord, the samurai you cook for, sleeps in the inner quarters, probably sprawled out like a cat in silk robes. He expects hot rice, warm tea, and at least 3 side dishes before his morning sword practice. Doesn't matter that you barely slept. Doesn't matter that the water buckets froze overnight. You have precisely until the hour of the tiger, about 4 a.m., to get it all done, or you'll be getting the look. You know the one, the same look he gives before cutting down a charging enemy. The first pot of rice is for him. Not too sticky, not too dry. Heaven help you if one grain is undercooked. You use the best of your stash, short grain white rice from the latest tax collection, polished until it gleams like pearls. You rinse it 5, 6, 7 times. You mutter little prayers under your breath. Not to the gods, but to the grains themselves. Please don't fail me today. A fact you probably didn't expect: samurai didn't usually eat much meat. Nope. Your lord follows the traditional Hanzen ryuri structure, a formal meal system that's part art, part status symbol, and part exhausting rubric for you. Mostly rice, vegetables, and fish, occasionally a little fowl. Sometimes wild boar if he's in a back from battle and need to impress mood. But today? Simple breakfast. Rice, miso soup with tofu, pickled plum, and maybe, a grilled sardine if he's feeling peckish. You add dried kelp to the soup stock and start slicing tofu with your lacquered knife. It's one of the only blades you're allowed to wield in this house. And yes, it's still sharp enough to take off a fingertip. Ask your predecessor. Historians still argue whether samurai actually loved their food, or just saw it as necessary fuel. But your lord? Oh, he notices. He comments on texture. On presentation. Once, he even critiqued your carrot curls. Not flavor, carrot curls. That's when you started crying into the pickles. Speaking of pickles, nukazuke, your specialty. Rice bran, salt, a bit of kombu. You buried some cucumber slices last night, massaged the mash with your hands for 5 whole minutes, then set a charcoal piece in the corner to absorb extra funk. You pull them out, wipe them gently, and arrange them with tweezers on the tiny porcelain plate shaped like a lotus leaf. You work like a ghost, silent, swift, unseen. The kitchen staff is still rolling in, one by one, like snails in the sun. You nod to the stable boy who's been cutting kindling. He scratches his neck and mutters something about bad dreams. You don't ask. You've had plenty yourself. You load the tray, soup, rice, sardine, pickles, tea, and kneel to place it on the lacquered wooden serving stand. No tray errors allowed. One chipped corner, you eat it. Not the food. The mistake. Here's a quirky detail. Many samurai, even the most fearsome ones, had favorite bowls or chopsticks. Superstitions ran deep. Yours? He has a lucky miso bowl with a crack sealed in gold, kintsugi style. If it's missing, full panic. The bowl is part of the meal. You hand the tray off to a senior attendant, bow low, and pray silently that today's meal hits all 5 flavor notes. Then, you grab a cold barley ball from yesterday's leftovers, shove it into your mouth, and head back to scrub the sardine grill before the fat turns sticky. That's when the shriek hits. Someone just dropped a teacup near the inner gate. Porcelain shatters. You freeze, then exhale. Not your fault. Not today. Welcome to the first hour of your day. You've already prepped 5 ingredients, dodged a scolding, and absorbed a steam facial that smells faintly of anchovy. There are 14 hours to go, and somewhere around hour 10, you'll finally sit. Maybe. You haul the miso bucket back into its dark corner with a grunt, your arms jelly from scrubbing burnt sardine skin off the metal grate. The sun is barely peeking over the roof tiles, but the kitchen is already heaving. Steam rises, ash drifts, and the rhythmic chop 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 of knives echoes off the stone. Your fingers are cramping, your stomach's growling, and someone just spilled millet all over the floor. You kneel down to sweep it up before the head steward sees it. Why? Because kitchen hierarchy in a samurai estate is dead serious. If you thought sword rankings were tough, try navigating this food chain. You're not the lowest anymore, congrats, but you're nowhere near the top either. At the bottom, you've got the fire boys, soot-smudged teens who spend their lives feeding charcoal into stoves and losing their eyebrows in the process. Above them, the water bearers. Then the vegetable cleaners. Then the junior choppers. You're a mid-tier cook now, respectable, but still easily replaced. Hovering above you like a hawk is the okami, the kitchen mistress. She's not even samurai, but if she tells you to chop daikon into flowers, you do it with a smile and pray she doesn't accidentally trip over your foot. Again. You slip behind her now, murmuring a humble excuse me as you carry a tray of washed burdock root. She grunts in response. That's her version of affection. Today's midday meal includes rice, again, a simmered root dish, seaweed salad, and tamagoyaki, sweet rolled egg. That last one is trickier than it sounds. Roll it too fast, and it breaks. Too slow, and it browns. Browning means disappointment. and disappointment means extra duties. Like scrubbing the fish bucket. Again. You set to work slicing daikon radish. Clean, confident, even slices. Samurai don't like surprises unless they're ambushes or marriage proposals. You've learned to slice with your pinky slightly curled, thumb tucked, knife angled like a falling raindrop. It's almost like meditation, until someone sneezes behind you and makes your knife jerk sideways. You shoot a look. It's the old rice washer, still drippy from the well. She grins at you with 2 teeth and 0 remorse. Careful, she croaks. 1 bad cut and they'll put you on dumpling duty for a month. Now that's a threat. Dumpling duty means hours of kneading, folding, and trying not to scream when the sesame oil splatters on your arms. No thanks. You focus. Historical fact time. The samurai class, especially during the Edo period, had very specific mealtime customs. Meals were served in individual trays called zen, often with symmetrical placement of side dishes. No communal pots or slapdash portions. Meals were ceremony, structure, order. Basically, stress with a side of tofu. You plate your daikon slices with care, fanning them just slightly, enough to look elegant, not enough to look like you're trying too hard. You drizzle a dash of yuzu sauce on top. Subtle. Earthy. Citrusy. And, bonus, it hides that one slice that got a tiny nick when you almost sneezed. Then it's onto the tofu simmer, soft squares swimming in a light broth of dashi, soy, and mirin. A clean tofu cut is a sacred thing. The okami peeks over your shoulder and grunts again. You take that as a win. But all is not calm. Behind you, there's a squabble over fish bones. 2 junior cooks are elbowing each other at the basin, both trying to gut the same mackerel. You don't intervene. This isn't your turf, and besides, last time you tried to help, you ended up wearing fish guts and got mistaken for a delivery boy. Again. A surprising tidbit, in some samurai kitchens, women were not allowed to touch the rice meant for the lord. Seriously. It was believed their presence could disrupt the sacred energy of the grain. Historians still argue whether this was a superstition, a control tactic, or just another excuse for gender-based micromanaging. Whatever the reason, it's why your rice duties came after you proved your worth scrubbing cauldrons and plucking feathers off pheasants. Speaking of which, the pheasant for tonight's dinner has just arrived, slung over the shoulder of a young messenger boy who looks like he hasn't slept in 3 days. You nod in thanks, take the bird, and hang it to drain by its feet. Blood drips into a wooden basin below. The smell isn't great, but you're used to it. You remember the first time you prepped one. The head wouldn't come off. You twisted, pulled, whispered apologies. It finally snapped, and someone nearby clapped. Turned out your lord was watching through the lattice screen. No pressure, right? You rinse your hands and grab the tamagoyaki pan. It's an old copper one, a little warped from years of use. You oil it lightly, pour in the egg mixture, and tilt. Then wait. Roll. Tilt. Pour again. Roll. One layer after another, building that soft, custardy log. If it cracks, back to square one. As you work, your mind drifts. You wonder what it'd be like to cook for someone else. A merchant maybe. Or a shrine priest. Someone who doesn't train with a katana and debate sword styles over breakfast. Someone who wouldn't notice if the soup was a little salty because the soy ladle slipped. But this is your life. Your lord. Your Trey. You're part of his war machine. Not on the battlefield, but in the belly. The Tamagoyaki turns out near perfect. You slice it carefully, revealing soft golden spirals inside. You arrange it with pickled ginger, then whisper a quick thank you to the egg gods. Then the Okami calls your name. She needs a hand arranging the lunch trays for the retainers. You nod, already rolling up your sleeves. Another hour, another mountain of rice. The sun's climbed a little higher, casting slanting beams through the wooden latticework, painting stripes across the kitchen floor. But you don't notice. You're too busy trying not to die in the marketplace. Your lord has declared, rather suddenly, that he's craving kinmedai sashimi for tonight. That's golden eye snapper, a fish so delicate, so pricey, and so quick to spoil that it might as well come with a tiny scroll saying good luck. He wants it fresh, of course. And so, you're sent. You tighten your faded cloak, tuck your coin pouch into your sash, and head out with a nod from the Okami. And trailing behind you, because of course, is a retainer who doesn't speak, doesn't blink, and definitely has a short sword tucked under that jacket. He's not here to help carry fish. He's here to make sure you don't pocket any change. Or accidentally talk to the wrong vendor. Or flee to Kyoto and start a new life as a tofu poet. The market street is already roaring when you arrive. Vendors holler about leeks, dried squid, plum wine, miso paste. The scent is incredible: smoke, vinegar, roasted chestnuts, and sweat. You sidestep a basket of eels trying to make a break for it and plunge into the crowd. Shopping as a samurai's cook isn't the same as shopping for your grandma. You're not just buying food. You're curating an experience. You're navigating class expectations, seasonal rules, and your lord's occasional whim for something inspired by the old capital, but not too pretentious. Yes, he once said that about mushrooms. First stop, the fishmonger. He greets you with a wink and immediately tries to sell you yesterday's flounder. You raise one eyebrow, glance at the sword-bearing shadow behind you, and casually say, "You think my master won't notice?" The smile vanishes. He bows so low he nearly headbutts a tuna, then offers a fresher catch. You inspect the kinmedai, bright red skin, clear eyes, the faint scent of sea brine. Perfect. Almost. You prod it gently and ask if he has one that was still swimming this morning. He winces. A few coins change hands. The retainer says nothing, but you're very aware of his presence. You know the rumors: cooks who skimmed too many coins were found mysteriously missing their slicing hand. You don't plan to test that. Next, vegetables. You're hunting down burdock root and mountain yam. The burdock is for a soup, the yam is for that one retainer's favorite dish, tororo, grated into a slimy, sticky paste that looks disgusting and tastes amazing. You eye a vendor's pile of yams and ask for the firmest one. She gives you a sly smile and says, "This one will stick to your chopsticks like gossip on a samurai's wife." You laugh, quietly. She's not wrong. Here's a fun little known tidbit. Many samurai kitchens required cooks to memorize seasonal charts. That's right, scrolls listing which vegetables were considered appropriate for each month. And not just for freshness. It was about harmony, status, serving bamboo shoots in autumn, culinary crime, ginger in spring, perfection. You consult your mental chart. July. Hot. Humid. Time for eggplant, perilla leaves, and loquats. You grab a few of each and barter for a better price by pointing out a bruise on one. She frowns but agrees. As you're weighing the shiitake mushrooms, trying to find caps that look elegant, not lumpy, a man bumps into you. He mutters an apology and keeps walking, but something's off. You instinctively pat your sash. The coins are still there. But one fewer. You whirl around. The man's gone. The retainer is already moving, slipping through the crowd like a hunting cat. You can't see what happens next, but 5 minutes later, he's back, hands clean, eyes blank. You don't ask. You just tuck the pouch deeper inside your robes and pretend nothing happened. Historians still argue whether retainers truly acted as bodyguards to cooks on shopping runs, or if this practice was limited to high-ranking households. But you know the truth. You're not just a cook. You're a moving target for sabotage, gossip, and accidental espionage. You've learned to keep your ears open while pretending not to listen. Back at the spice stall, you pick up a fresh pouch of Sancho pepper and some dried chrysanthemum petals, your signature garnish. You once used plum blossom, but your lord said it reminded him of his ex-wife. Never again. Your final stop is the tofu maker. His stall is humble, but he pulls curds so fresh they squeak. You place your order, and as he wraps it in bamboo leaf, he leans in and whispers, "Heard there's a wedding at the Sato estate." Might be why your master's suddenly so hungry. You raise your eyebrows, but say nothing. Not your business. Not officially. Still, when you return, arms full of delicate ingredients, you're already rewriting tonight's menu in your head, something bold, but elegant. Comforting, but impressive. You suspect tonight's dinner isn't just about taste. It's about making a statement. And the better your food, the stronger that statement becomes. You hand the purchases to a junior and report to the Okami. She sniffs the kinmadai approvingly. "You didn't disgrace us," she mutters. That's the closest she's come to praise all month. You finally sit, just for a minute, to sip a cup of barley tea. The market dust clings to your sleeves, your feet ache, and you swear someone stepped on your big toe. But the ingredients are fresh, the coin pouch is intact, and the retainers vanished back into the shadows. Mission complete. For now. You barely get to sip the last of your barley tea before a loud clang jerks you back to reality. Someone's dropped a pot. Again. You sigh, set your cup down, and shuffle toward the prep station, slipping right back into the rhythm of the kitchen. Because now comes the tricky part, transforming raw ingredients into something fit for a man who once critiqued your pickled radish for lacking emotional depth. Tonight's dinner isn't just a meal. It's a performance. You'll be judged not just on flavor but on texture, balance, temperature, color, and how well each dish reflects your lord's mood. You're expected to read him like a weather scroll, only hungrier. You start with the kinmadai. It's cold under your touch, the flesh still firm, the red scales catching the candlelight. This part always feels like a duel, just you and the knife. You've sharpened it twice already today. but still you test it on a sheet of rice paper. Clean slice. Perfect. You breathe through your nose and begin. With short, smooth strokes, you work along the grain, removing the skin, filleting carefully to avoid any micro tears in the muscle. The sashimi must be cut just so, neither too thick nor too thin. If you can hold it on a chopstick and see light through it, you're close to perfect. You plate the slices in a spiral, with a twist of pickled daikon in the center. Garnish with micro shiso and the lightest dab of wasabi. No dipping bowls tonight. Instead, the soy is brushed lightly onto each slice. Presentation matters, but not just in a visual sense. You're creating a moment, a pause, a sigh. The food is supposed to speak, so you don't have to. Historical fact break: samurai meals were typically served in multi-course formats, called kaiseki, long before it became a trendy chef word. Each course had a roll, appetizer, soup, sashimi, grilled, simmered, steamed, and pickled. The final course was usually rice with pickles and miso soup. Dessert? If you were lucky, seasonal fruit or sweet bean paste. But mostly, samurai preferred discipline over indulgence. That said, they could be oddly picky about presentation. You once got lectured for serving grilled eel with the head facing the wrong direction. It invited bad fortune, apparently. No pressure. As you continue prepping, a strange hush spreads through the kitchen. You glance up. Sure enough, the kero, the chief retainer, has arrived to inspect the meal before it's sent to your lord's chamber. He doesn't eat it. He just looks at it. And sometimes smells it. You've seen him tilt his head like a hawk inspecting prey, then declare, "The grilled turnips feel emotionally cold." He starts now with the soup. It's a clear dashi with ribbons of chrysanthemum petals and tiny mushroom fans. You hold your breath. He sniffs. He squints. He turns, walks out. That's the best case scenario. Back to work, the okami mutters, and the room exhales. You move on to the simmered eggplant, letting it soak up a glaze of mirin, soy, and ginger. You've learned the timing down to the second. Too long, and it collapses into mush. Too short, and it stays rubbery. And remember, this is being served to a man trained to sense hesitation in battle stances. You think he can't taste if your eggplant was distracted? Please. As the dishes come together, you direct a junior to begin stacking the zen trays, one for each course, lacquered and polished until they gleam. Every item has a home. Soup in the top left. Pickles at the top right. Main dish in the center. Chopsticks angled precisely. The trays are checked, rechecked, then passed off to the silent servants who will carry them with exactly 6.5 steps per interval, no more, no less. Fringe tidbit for you: during the Edo period, some daimyo households had their own food code books, documenting exactly how meals should be structured according to day of the week, guest rank, or moon phase. One page from a surviving book even includes a diagram for melon carving techniques suitable for diplomatic visitors. Imagine losing a trade agreement over ugly fruit. As you plate the grilled river trout, you notice a crack in one of the ceramic bowls. You freeze. It's faint, barely visible. But your lord has a sharp eye. And worse, a long memory. You quickly swap it out for another, adjusting the radish garnish to hide the seam where the last one sat. Crisis averted. You mentally remind yourself to offer incense at the kitchen shrine later. The god of small errors is always watching. There's one final task before the trays leave your hands. You taste everything. Not full bites, just pinches, dabs, sips. You're watching for imbalance, sourness, bitterness. Not just literal flavor, but emotional tone. A stew can't be too aggressive. A soup can't feel anxious. You're not just feeding your lord's body, you're feeding his sense of superiority. Which brings us to the philosophical debate. Historians still argue whether cooking in a samurai household was considered an art or a duty. On one hand, you're shaping beauty on a plate. On the other, if you displease your master, it might be the last thing you ever cook. Art with consequences. You help load the trays onto the serving boards, every dish covered with a wooden lid to keep in the aroma and mystery. Then it's out of your hands. Literally. As the servers vanish down the hall, you slump onto a stool and finally exhale. You won't know for another hour whether your lord enjoyed it. No one tells you directly. Sometimes you just find a plum pit returned on the tray. Or, worse, a full untouched course, still warm. You wait. You clean your station. You quietly wipe down the miso tubs, again. Then the okami returns. No expression. She drops a folded note onto your prep block. You open it slowly. One word. Acceptable. You smile. That's samurai for excellent. You'd think the evening would calm down after dinner's served, but no. You're only halfway through the day, and there's still night duty, an ominous phrase that somehow sounds more relaxing than it actually is. See, samurai don't just eat once. There are midnight cravings. Tea requests. Secret duels that somehow require broth. And worst of all, surprise guests. It starts with a quiet knock. You pause midway through inventory, counting how many yuzu you've got left, and look up. One of the younger servants slips in and bows, low and nervous. A messenger from Lord Kato's estate, he murmurs. You freeze. Lord Kato. The man who once complained your chestnut rice tasted too nostalgic. He's not here, not exactly. But his retainer is, and the implications are immediate. Your master has decided to entertain. Late. And if this retainer gets anything less than a subtle culinary masterpiece disguised as a snack, it'll be a diplomatic incident. You get to work fast. The kitchen is quieter now, the juniors either cleaning or already collapsed on their futons. But not you. You're back in front of the fire, pan-frying delicate slices of lotus root while steeping a quick broth with shavings of dried bonito that cost more than your sandals. You have to move quickly, but precisely. A loud clatter or careless cut could wake the wrong people. So your movements are soft. Graceful. Like you're trying not to wake a sleeping tiger. Because, well, you are. Several, in fact. There's a traditional phrase for this kind of work, tsukumitakoro, the moon-viewing kitchen. It refers to cooking late at night when the world is hushed, the moon high, and the oil lamps flicker like fireflies. It sounds poetic. It also means you're slicing pickles at 2 a.m. for a man who's never once said thank you. Still, there's something beautiful in it. The way the steam coils into the rafters, the gentle scrape of your knife, the sound of a distant shamisen floating in from someone's open shutters. You work almost by instinct now, relying on touch and smell more than sight. You've done this so many times, it's like the ingredients know where to go. But then, the door creaks open again. Another knock. You don't like this knock. The Okami enters, her face unreadable. Lord Kato's retainer is requesting sakesuk, she says. That's vegetables or fish marinated in sake lees, delicate, fermented, complex. Of course he is. You mutter under your breath and start digging through the fermenting crocks. You've got just enough daikon radish soaked in the lees of last month's Junmai Jinjo batch. You slice it thin, fan it out on a black lacquer plate, and dot it with shreds of dried yuzu peel. A little over the top? Yes. But this is diplomacy through daikon. Fringe tidbit: some high-ranking samurai families believe that offering perfectly aged sakesuk could bring good fortune in negotiations. There were even recipes passed down through generations, treated like state secrets. Rumor has it one family's miracle pickle recipe was worth more than their armory. You plate the midnight snacks with the reverence of a tea ceremony. Light miso soup. Grilled eggplant brushed with sesame oil. The sakesuk radish. And finally, a tiny bowl of warm rice with a single preserved plum, umebashi, wrinkled and red like a warrior's heart. The tray vanishes into the hallway, and you're left with silence. You slump onto a stool, wiping your hands with a rag that's more whole than cloth at this point. Historians still argue whether cooks of your rank were considered staff or inner retainers. It's a blurry line. You don't wear swords. You don't take part in battle. But you do hold power, indirect, silent, but unmistakable. You influence moods, alliances, and sometimes even treaties. All with salt and steam. You drift off for a moment, head nodding forward, until the sound of footsteps jars you awake. You straighten up just as a different servant enters. The retainer sends his compliments, she says quietly. That's rare. You nod, say nothing. But your chest swells just a little. You shuffle into the back pantry. Night prep is also the time for maintenance. You check the pickling crocks, ginger, plum, cucumber. You skim off any white mold. Stir the lees. Refill the water pans under the dried kelp rack. It's not glamorous, but if you let this slide for even one day, everything falls apart. You also take inventory of the charcoal stash. One bag short. Again. Probably the guards borrowing it for their winter foot warmers. You make a mental note to glare at them tomorrow. As the final candle burns low, you pour yourself a bowl of leftover soup, lukewarm, but comforting. You crouch in the corner and sip slowly, staring at the embers. It's a strange life. You're surrounded by knives, heat, steam, and the constant threat of humiliation. Yet, in moments like this, there's a strange peace. You don't fight wars, but you survive small battles every day, quiet ones, fought with ladles instead of blades. You finally crawl into your mat, still in your work clothes. It's almost dawn. Roosters are starting to crow. In 3 hours, you'll be up again. The Lord likes his breakfast early, especially after sake. You close your eyes. Tomorrow is another duel with the cutting board. You wake up before your eyes even open. That groggy, soupy sense of time tells you it's just shy of dawn. The charcoal smell still lingers in your clothes. Your back protests as you sit up on your mat, joints cracking like firewood. But there's no time to baby yourself. Samurai breakfast is sacred. And late is unforgivable. You shuffle into the kitchen, where it's still dim. A couple of your junior assistants have beat you there, stoking the fire, boiling water. You nod at them, the kind of nod that means, we're alive. Let's keep it that way. First up, miso soup. Always miso. No two mornings are the same, though. Today it's going to be white miso with tofu and spring onion, light and soothing. You start by gently heating the dashi base, made from yesterday's carefully saved kombu and bonito flakes. Waste nothing. Not because you're noble, because ingredients are hard-won, and heaven help the cook who runs out mid-week. You glance at the order scroll. Breakfast today is standard formal. That means 1 grilled fish, soup, rice, pickles, 1 seasonal side dish, and tamagoyaki, that delicate rolled omelet that seems simple until you're the one flipping it over hot iron with sticks for fingers. Your gut tells you, grilled mackerel, pickled burdock root, simmered bamboo shoots with sansho pepper, and that golden egg ribbon that makes or breaks your pride. The mackerel has to be salted the night before, which you wisely did during last night's second wind. It's dry cured now, perfect for a slow charcoal grill. You slide it onto the grate and the fat sizzles instantly, sending up a thin curl of fragrant smoke. It's going to be a good one today, maybe. Now the tamago. You pour a thin layer of beaten egg into the rectangular pan, tilting it gently so the edges don't crisp. Flip, fold, roll. Again. Layers build slowly, custard-like and barely sweet. You catch your assistant staring nervously. You motion them over. You're next, you whisper, grinning like a villain. They pale slightly. Mainstream historical fact time. Breakfast for the samurai class wasn't just a meal, it was a political ritual. Served early, eaten quietly, and tailored to display a man's status through restraint. Too fancy, and you looked vain. Too simple, and you looked poor or careless. There was even an unspoken rule about the size of the pickled plum. Big plum? Too showy. Small plum? You're respectable. No plum? Suspicious. But even at breakfast, trouble lurks. The Okami enters with a sharp flick of her robe. He's asked for barley rice today. No white rice, she says. You stifle a groan. You had barley soaking for lunch, not breakfast. It's not fully softened. Still, the master gets what the master wants. You swap pots, adjusting the water ratio and adding a splash of sake to coax out the sweetness. It'll be close. Not perfect, but acceptable if you time the steam release like a battlefield maneuver. While the fish finishes, you delegate soup garnishing and begin plating. Pickled burdock root curls like ribbons across the lacquer tray. You add the miso bowl, a slice of mackerel with grated daikon on the side, the egg, cut perfectly into rectangles, and a fresh, crisp umami for that pop of color and pucker. The side dish? Simmered bamboo shoots, because spring just started to peek out. You toss in a few sansho leaves for fragrance. Clean, elegant, seasonal. The kind of dish that makes your lord feel attuned to nature, even if he hasn't stepped outside in 3 weeks. Quirky tidbit alert, In certain clans, samurai were tested on their discipline by how they ate their tamagoyaki. Too fast? You were seen as gluttonous. Too slow? Suspiciously delicate. Just the right pace, bite sizes, and posture? Now that's a man who can lead troops. The trays are sent out. You collapse back onto your stool. You've been up for 3 hours, and it's not even the 6th hour of the day. Someone hands you barley tea. You want sake. But fine. You sip and listen for the creaks and clinks of returned trays. Some days they come back with full bowls, meaning your master got summoned, distracted, or mad. Other days, everything is picked clean. Today, one tray comes back with a single sliver of egg untouched. You wince. But the Okami enters again, this time with the rarest words in a cook's world. He requests the same breakfast tomorrow. Exactly. Boom. Validation. You could cry into your broth. Historians still debate whether samurai kitchens operated with full autonomy or if they were simply vessels for a lord's tastes. In some households, head cooks were trusted advisors. In others, you were a glorified servant with a knife. You? Somewhere in the middle. You're not giving political advice anytime soon, but when the food is right, the mood in the castle shifts. People relax. Swords stay sheathed a little longer. You return to the back for post-breakfast duties. Dashi stock must be strained. Rice bran tubs for pickling need aerating. Salted fish hung to dry must be checked for mold. The tofu delivery arrives late again. You scowl. You'll need it for the midday snack. Someone's bound to want warm tofu with grated ginger by the second bell. Then you do your rounds in the pantry. You tap the sacks of dried rice. You lift the baskets of root vegetables, noting what's bruised. You sniff the vinegar pots. One is too sharp, possibly fermented wrong. You set it aside for cleaning. Before you know it, someone's whispering about lunch. You glance up, incredulous. Already? You nod. Roll your shoulders. Time to do it all again. But hey, at least no one asked for a melon carving. Yet. Lunch in a samurai household isn't what you'd call a break. It's a tightrope act of speed, presentation, and tactical flavor. Unlike the controlled ceremony of breakfast or the indulgent pacing of dinner, lunch is the wild card, short notice, high stakes, and often plagued by surprises. You're wiping down your prep board from the morning rush when a young messenger bursts in. Midday meal for the second commander's guests, he says, barely out of breath. You blink. Guests? That wasn't on today's schedule. You check the wall scroll again. Still nothing. Just a few lines of ink, serene and unbothered by reality. Guests mean more than just extra food. They mean politics. They mean status games played with lacquer bowls and fish paste. And they mean you've got less than an hour to make it all look effortless. You call out to your team, 2 assistants, half asleep, and a kitchen boy picking his nose. We're doing a 5-dish tray. Speed. Elegance. Go. They spring into motion, adrenaline overriding whatever dreams they were still nursing. You already know the centerpiece, Chikuzen and a simmered medley of chicken, taro, lotus root, and carrot. Hearty, colorful, symbolic. It says, "We respect our roots," literally. You set the taro to boil immediately and start slicing lotus root into coins, each resembling tiny snowflake wheels. There's beauty in symmetry, even when your hands are shaking from fatigue. While the root vegetables simmer in a sweet soy broth, you hand off miso soup to the junior assistant, this time red miso with namiko mushrooms and a dash of grated daikon. He looks terrified, but you believe in him. Sort of. You handle the pickles yourself, paper-thin cucumber slices massaged with salt and a hint of rice vinegar, topped with a single shiso leaf. Understated, clean, safe. For rice, you go with takikomi gohan, mixed rice cooked with mushrooms, soy, and thin strips of abure-aged tofu. Comforting, but also earthy and complex. It steams quickly in a small wooden cauldron, and you fight the urge to keep peeking at it. You choose tamari-dressed spinach for the side dish, knowing it'll hold its shape even if it cools a little. You blanch the leaves, press out the water, slice into neat logs, then drizzle with thick, dark soy and a sprinkle of roasted sesame seeds. Minimalism with a punch. Quirky tidbit, in some households, especially during the late Edo period, lunch trays were arranged according to seasonal poetry themes. If your tray didn't evoke the spirit of early spring or echo the chill of lingering snow, you weren't just a bad cook, you were a cultural disappointment. You start plating just as the rice finishes its final steam. You crack the lid and inhale. Rich, mushroomy. Perfect. You fluff it quickly with a bamboo paddle and start ladling portions into shallow lacquer bowls with matching lids. Everything has to look like it belongs together. A visual harmony. Color, texture, scent. Nothing too bold, but never bland. A balancing act between flavor and diplomacy. And just as you wipe the final tray, the door opens, again. Another assistant appears, clearly avoiding eye contact. Ah, the commander requests, a cold soba edition. You just stare at him. Cold soba. In winter. For a lunch ordered an hour ago. No one here even has ice, let alone enough time to chill buckwheat noodles properly. You pause, count to 4, and exhale through your teeth. Then you pivot. Fast. You bark orders to start boiling water. You mix buckwheat flour into a stiff dough, adding hot water until the texture feels right, springy but firm. You roll it out thin, slice into noodles with your best soba knife, and drop them into the pot. While they boil, you prepare the dipping sauce, soy, mirin, dashi, a hint of yuzu peel, and strain it into elegant little cups. The trick is the chill. You grab the ceramic sake jug from last night's guest tray, it's still cold, and pour it over the drained noodles in a shallow bowl. Not quite iced, but refreshing. Close enough for a midday compromise. Historians still argue whether samurai lunch was always this elaborate, or if some of this excess came later with the merchant class influence. There are records of Spartan rice and soup meals, especially in war-torn provinces. But in peace, lunch became a quiet display of wealth and taste. The kind that said, we could fight, but we're above it, thanks. Finally, the trays are finished. You line them up, mushroom rice, red miso soup, pickled cucumber, tamari spinach, simmered chicken and roots, and that last-minute bowl of almost cold soba with dipping sauce. You add a sliver of wasabi for drama. Just a hint. They're taken away silently. You collapse onto a stool. Again. It's becoming a ritual. This one you call the seat of brief regret. The post-lunch lull is a strange time. You're too tired to nap, too wired to relax. So you do the in-between tasks. Scraping fish scales from yesterday's clean pile. Washing rice for dinner. Reorganizing the soy sauce barrels based on usage rate, because your OCD kicks in when you're exhausted. That's when you hear it. Laughter. Someone is laughing. From the commander's quarters. A full, genuine laugh. Rare. Strange. You look at your assistant. He heard it too. A few minutes later, the young messenger reappears. You tense. But instead of doom, he delivers something else. Compliments on the chicken. Lord Cato's man says it reminded him of home. You blink. Lord Cato? Again? Turns out, the second commander invited him to stay after last night's pleasant supper. So yes, your midnight diplomacy worked. And now your lunch has triggered samurai nostalgia, which is its own political currency. You allow yourself one full exhale. No smile, not yet. That's for when the kitchen is clean. You glance at the slowly darkening sky. Dinner is coming. Dinner isn't a meal. It's a performance. And you? You're the reluctant stage manager, sweating behind the curtain, praying no one notices the spotlight flickering. The sun begins its slow descent, casting that golden haze across the courtyard stones. That's your cue. You can hear faint clinking from the guest rooms, cups being set down, soft thuds of servants preparing futons, the faint shuffle of tabi socks. Meanwhile, you light the cooking hearth again, wincing as the smoke tickles your already battered throat. You're on your third fire today, and it's not even festival season. Tonight's dinner is labeled formal with extended service. That's samurai code for multiple courses, lots of ceremonial pacing, and zero room for improvisation. You glance at the menu scroll again, 3 zens, or trays. 9 distinct elements. This is the big leagues. The kind of meal that can influence tomorrow's alliances, or spark a sword fight by moonlight. First things first, soup course. It must arrive hot, subtle, and poetic. You go with clear broth, aswamono, infused with dried scallops, a slice of daikon cut into a chrysanthemum shape, and a sprig of matsuba. Each detail matters. Even the leaf must be placed just off-center, like it fell there naturally. It's the kind of touch that earns quiet nods from guests who never say thank you. Then, sashimi. You slice sea bream, Thai, with surgical calm. 3 cuts, no more. The blade must never saw, only glide. You add slivers of shiso and a delicate mound of freshly grated wasabi root, not the green paste abomination some peasants call wasabi. Please. Mainstream historical fact, kaiseki-style dining, with its sequence of small, seasonal plates, was deeply influenced by both Zen Buddhism and the tea ceremony. Even among the warrior class, this tradition signaled refinement, patience, and a connection to nature. You're not just feeding hunger, you're feeding philosophy. Next is grilled. Tonight? Salted ayu, sweet fish. You place them whole on skewers, curve their bodies gently to mimic swimming upstream, and roast them slowly over white charcoal. One of the assistants makes a joke about fish yoga. You smirk but don't laugh. Not while you're sweating over fish posture. Then comes the simmered dish, namono. This one's a showpiece: pumpkin, shiitake, and eel belly, braised together in a soy mirin base until they practically melt under chopsticks. You add a delicate yuzu peel sliver for contrast. Your third tray needs a rice dish. You go big, okawa, sticky rice steamed with chestnuts and black sesame. It's filling, grounding, slightly sweet. A grounding dish to anchor the evening. You fluff it carefully with chopsticks so the chestnuts stay whole, like golden stones hiding in snow. By now the team is moving like a nervous hive. One assistant grates fresh daikon. Another carefully picks bones from grilled sardines for the small side plate. You stop to inspect the plates: no smudges, no cracks, no mismatched lacquer. Then, the smallest of touches, a vinegared jelly of crab and cucumber, served cold in a porcelain dish shaped like a maple leaf. Just a couple of bites, meant to reset the palate. You place it in the center tray, feeling very pleased with yourself. Quirky tidbit: in elite households, cooks sometimes scented the wooden trays with sandalwood smoke before plating. Not enough to overpower, just a whisper. It's an old Kyoto trick, and tonight, you're using it. You briefly pass the empty serving boards over a tray of burning incense, just long enough to capture the essence. Will anyone notice? Maybe not consciously. But they'll feel it. Historians still argue whether these elaborate meals were truly appreciated by the samurai, or simply endured as a sign of status. Some sources suggest lords often preferred simple grilled rice cakes over kaiseki fuss. But declining a formal dinner would have been like refusing a gift, dangerous and insulting. So they sat, nodded politely, and silently prayed for sake. Speaking of which, yes, sake. You select a dry, aged variety with a deep umami tone and a faint cedar aroma. Not too strong, no one needs loose tongues tonight. You warm it gently in ceramic bottles and deliver it to the okami, who will portion it out in a precise rhythm. Now, delivery time. Trays are carried off in ceremonial sequence, each one carried with two hands, head slightly bowed. You watch them go, knowing that once they pass the screen door, your control ends. You can't adjust the lighting, you can't refresh the soup, you can't explain the subtle contrast between the shiso and the eel. You can only wait. You take that seat again. The seat of brief regret. Only now it feels more like the stool of hollow anticipation. An hour passes. Maybe two. It's hard to tell when your stomach has become an anxious rock and your brain is fogged from sake steam. You clean, of course. Always cleaning. Wipe, sweep, store. Label tomorrow's tofu. Reset the vinegar weights. Then, quietly, a servant appears. His Excellency would like to thank the kitchen, she says. The sweet fish was alive with the river. You pause, knife in hand, and blink. Alive with the river. That's poetic praise. High praise. You mouth the phrase silently, trying to etch it into your tired brain. Alive with the river. You're about to finally sit when a junior assistant peeks in, eyes wide. He also requests tea sweets. You sigh. Not in annoyance. In deep, spiritual surrender. You still have a batch of chestnut yokon jelly bars left. You slice them into miniature fans, top each with a candied red bean, and dust them with roasted soy flour. They'll do. You arrange them on a black lacquer dish with a silver edge, and they disappear into the hallway. As the last trays return, mostly empty, you finally sit on your mat in the kitchen corner, stretch your legs out long, and exhale. The fire is low. The room is quiet. Someone snores softly. Tomorrow it starts again. But for now, you are the silent host of a samurai's night. It's barely dawn, but your feet hit the floor like they've been waiting all night. There's a stiffness in your back that only comes from sleeping in a sitting position, half draped over a bundle of rice sacks. You roll your shoulders, groan, and shuffle across the cold floor toward the hearth. No time for luxury. Not even a sip of tea. Today is provisioning day, and if you don't beat the rush to the market stalls, you might end up trying to pass off yesterday's radishes as today's treasure. Outside, the air bites at your cheeks, damp with morning mist and faintly metallic from nearby forges. You sling your cloth satchel over your shoulder, coins tucked in the lining, and slip through the gates before the courtyard gets busy. It's not a grand exit. More of a tactical ghosting. You trudge toward the market square with the confident dread of someone who knows what's coming. You'll be elbowed, overcharged, flirted with, if lucky, sneered at, if not, and then probably guilt-tripped into buying things you didn't plan for. But you've done this dance 100 times. And besides, the fishmonger owes you a favor. First stop, rice broker. You haggle over a sack of polished short grain. He tries to slip in some broken kernels, but you notice, because you always notice. One eyebrow and a hard stare later, you get a cleaner sack, along with a free scoop of millet. Victory. Mainstream historical fact: samurai households, especially during the peaceful Edo period, were bound to detailed accounting of food, what came in, what was served, what was wasted. As head cook, your ledger must be immaculate. A missing daikon could trigger accusations of theft. A miscounted fish? That's court drama waiting to happen. Next stop, vegetables. Burdock root, cucumbers, eggplants with that deep purple sheen. You sniff them, thump them, weigh them in your palm like gold coins. The seller offers you a mountain yam as sweet as a courtesan's whisper. You buy it, partly because the line was good. Then you wander toward the fish stall, and there he is, Genta, the fishmonger. Wrinkled, grinning, reeking of ocean. You again, he says with mock disgust. What'll it be, kitchen hero? You scan the buckets. Sardines, flounder, mackerel, but your eye lands on a fat silver salmon, still gasping faintly. That one. You point. Genta raises his eyebrows. Expensive taste today. House guest, you lie. Or maybe not. With this household, someone always shows up uninvited. Quirky tidbit: in some domains, especially coastal ones, cooks were known to offer bribes, tokens of goodwill, to fishmongers for the best catch. Salted plums, pickled garlic, even hand-sewn cloths. The kitchen economy ran on more than coin. You trade Genta a jar of last season's pickled bamboo shoots for a better cut of salmon belly. He nods, amused. For you, I'll even pretend it wasn't caught by mistake. Last stop, sweet stall. Not for the Lord, this one's for you. You buy a roasted rice cracker, hot off the grill, brushed with sweet soy. It crackles between your teeth like a reward. The walk back is heavier. The sack of rice digs into your spine, and the salmon slaps softly in its straw wrap, reminding you of how many things could go wrong before dinner. You pass other servants along the road, some cheerful, some glazed-eyed, one vomiting into a ditch. You give them a wide berth. We've all been there. Back in the kitchen compound, the mood is different. Hustle has replaced the groggy shuffle. One assistant is already scrubbing daikon with a straw brush. Another is boiling water for tofu blanching. The kitchen boy is pretending not to nap behind the firewood stack. You'll deal with him later. You unload your bounty onto the prep board and start sorting. Root vegetables to the cool shelf. Greens hung upside down near the damp wall. Fish into the clay icebox lined with straw and mountain snow. Yes, actual snow. It's your most precious resource. You get one delivery a week, packed in sawdust and guarded like treasure. It's already melting faster than you'd like. Historians still argue whether these snowboxes, yukimuro, were common in mid-ranking samurai homes or reserved for the elite. Some evidence suggests even middle-tier households maintain them for key perishables, especially during summer. Others argue they were just for show, with most storage handled by salting or drying. You take a moment to relabel your pickle jars. That's your quiet joy, labels written in tiny, perfect brush strokes. Pickled ginger. Apricot miso. Turnip with persimmon peel. If the house burns down, you're saving the pickle shelf first. And then, the paper. The morning request arrives on a scroll, tied with silk cord. That alone is a bad sign. You untie it slowly. Tonight, ceremonial dinner for Lord Mori. 3 trays. Poetry theme, echoes of new spring. You close your eyes. Of course. This means new dishes. Seasonal ingredients. Floral garnishes. Probably a decorative mochi centerpiece that no one eats but everyone judges. You scribble down the first ideas in your mental menu journal. Cherry blossom rice, maybe? Sweet tofu dumplings and plum syrup? A soup with kinome, young leaves of the prickly ash tree, subtle and peppery? The wheels start turning. One assistant groans. More flour food? You nod. Yes. But this time, we go full drama. You assign tasks, ice the salmon, begin tofu pressing, start a syrup reduction with sake and white miso. Every moment counts. You don't know what Lord Mori is like. He might be generous, sour, impossible to please, but you do know this. He'll leave with an opinion. And that opinion could affect your lord's standing, and yours. So tonight's dinner isn't just food. It's reputation, diplomacy, and edible theater. You crack your knuckles, lift your knife, and whisper to yourself, let's make something worth remembering. The kitchen is a storm now. Controlled chaos swirling around a center of calm, or at least you pretend it's calm. In truth, your pulse is playing taiko drums under your skin, and there's soy sauce in your sleeve again. You're not cooking. You're choreographing. Managing 15 hands, 5 fires, and at least one sneaky mouse who keeps leaving rice husks in the pantry. That'll be dealt with tomorrow. Right now, All focus is on Lord Mori's visit. The scroll said echoes of new spring. Poetic themes like this are lovely in theory, but in the kitchen they mean every dish must whisper something seasonal, metaphorical, and, ideally, deeply moving. You start with soup. Clear broth again, but this time with a surprise, a pressed ball of mashed yam and whitefish, shaped into a plum blossom. In the center, a dab of beet for color. It floats like a soft, edible dream. You add a sprig of quinoa, not too much, or it'll sting the tongue. It's subtle. It's tender. It might even make a grown samurai weep. Then the sashimi. You choose salmon for richness, but pair it with paper-thin slices of young onions soaked in yuzu. A little bitterness for balance. You plate it like a winding river, with a slice of lotus root cut into a fan. One of the assistants leans over to admire it and mutters, "Looks like a painting." You pretend not to beam with pride. Mainstream historical fact, samurai cuisine wasn't always rich. In fact, the warrior elite often prized restraint. Extravagance was frowned upon, especially under Tokugawa rule. So even high-status meals had to strike a balance between aesthetic beauty and disciplined modesty. Too much flair? You'd be mocked for trying too hard. You check the simmering pot. Today's namono is kabocha squash and mountain vegetables, flavored with kelp stock and a hint of smoky dried bonito. But you've added one little twist, a hollowed radish cup filled with stewed ginkgo nuts and pine mushrooms. It's your own invention, inspired by a walk through the woods last autumn. Is it traditional? Not exactly. But it sings of spring, and that's the assignment. Then comes the grill. You skewer the salmon belly Jenna gave you, fatty, shimmering, almost too pretty to cook. You salt it lightly, grill its skin down, and brush it once with sweet miso. Just once. Too much and it caramelizes too fast. You need it to blister, not burn. One assistant brings the flower garnish tray, edible chrysanthemum, pickled cherry blossoms, and tiny pansies pressed in vinegar. You choose with care. A single petal can elevate or ruin a plate. You remember the last time someone used marigold on tofu. Disaster. Tasted like sandalwood soap. Quirky tidbit, some cooks, particularly those working in Kyoto, trained to fold miniature origami cranes out of pressed radish slices. They didn't taste like much, but they looked incredible on lacquerware. You've never mastered the trick. The radish always tears at the last fold, and you end up swearing in 5 dialects. Historians still argue whether these highly detailed presentations were experienced by all samurai or only the daimyo elite. Some records suggest lower-tier samurai ate mostly millet, dried fish, and pickles, while reserving the good stuff for weddings or New Year. Others believe that even mid-ranking warriors hosted seasonal meals like this, more for appearances than appetite. You steal a glance outside. The sky's turning that bruised lavender color that means guests will arrive soon. You bark out instructions, final check on sake cups, refresh the charcoal in the tea kettle, polish the tray edges. You taste everything one last time, broth, sauce, even the pickled plum you've tucked into the rice bowl like a secret. Your trays are masterpieces. 3 courses, 6 dishes each. Balanced, thoughtful, and, you dare say it, beautiful. And then, disaster. One of the younger assistants drops a lacquer tray. It lands on the stone with a slap and a crack. Everyone freezes. You rush over. It's cracked, but not shattered. You inhale slowly. That was the extra, yes? He nods, wide-eyed. Yes. Then it's your lucky day. You keep your voice even. You were that boy once. Shaky hands, sleepless nights, bruises from stern warnings. One tray is not the end of the world. You remind him, we survive. We adapt. We do not panic. You swap in another tray. No one will know. The other assistants move faster, galvanized by the near miss. You make a mental note, the one who dropped the tray will be excellent under pressure, one day. Not today, though. Then, it's time. The trays vanish through the shoji screen, carried by the house's most trusted servers. They walk like monks, slow, deliberate, respectful. You hear nothing. Just the distant drip of the water clock and the faint rustle of fabric. You wait. 5 minutes. 10. A light breeze pushes through the window, lifting the scent of grilled fish and plum syrup. Then a message. Lord Mori smiled. No words. Just smiled. That's it. You exhale. That smile could mean anything. Delight. Polite acceptance. Repressed indigestion. But in this world, a smile from a guest of rank is gold. You let yourself sit for the first time in hours. Your body hums with tension, exhaustion, and the faint urge to eat your own pickled garnish out of sheer hunger. You pop a leftover ginkgo nut into your mouth and chew slowly. Bitter. Sweet. Grounding. Dinner was a success. Not flashy. Not showy. But balanced. Seasonal. Quietly triumphant. And no one bled into the soup, which is always a bonus. You wake to pain in your calves. Real, burning pain. The kind that says, congratulations, you crouched for 14 hours straight and didn't stretch once. Your joints sound like cracked twigs as you stand, and your eyes itch with smoke from yesterday's charcoal. But you survived Lord Mori's visit. That's a win. Even if your dreams were haunted by floating trays and talking salmon. Today's pace is slower, relatively. No major ceremonies. No surprise guests. Just the steady rhythm of a samurai household ticking along. Which means, morning porridge, pickled radish, barley tea, and, if the Lord is in a good mood, grilled river trout. You prepare it all with the quiet precision of someone who's already fought their battle and lived to tell the tale. One assistant asks, "Can we use leftover squash from yesterday?" You squint at him. "Only if you want to be exiled to the pantry dungeon." He blinks. "I'm kidding. But label it clearly and pickle what's left. We'll serve it with the midday meal." Even the leftovers must perform. By mid-morning, the cook's ledger arrives, long and full of commentary. The household scribe has, once again, offered unsolicited poetic descriptions of your soup. You scan the passage. Like moonlight blooming on a spring lake. You snort. It was daikon and fish, not enlightenment. Mainstream historical fact, kitchens like yours kept detailed records of meals, menus, guest reactions, ingredients used. These weren't just for vanity. They served diplomatic and administrative purposes. If your lord wanted to recall what he served a rival lord 2 years ago, your notes had to deliver. And there's your real headache, bureaucracy. You sit cross-legged, brush in hand, copying down the previous night's dishes with ceremonial flair. The ink is expensive, the paper delicate. One smear and it's ruined. You even include a sketch of the mochi plum tree centerpiece, which no one ate but everyone complimented. Then, there's inventory. You send a kitchen boy to the root cellar with a list. Check the burdock. If it's sprouting, feed it to the stable hands. He makes a face. That's cruel. Trust me. They've had worse. You review the miso pots next. Some are fermenting too fast, summer's creeping in. You shift their positions to cooler spots and mutter about needing more charcoal for ice storage. The pickle jars bubble softly in the corner like sleepy volcanoes. Everything's alive, even when it looks preserved. Quirky tidbit, some cooks believe that miso had moods. If you sang near the fermentation crocks, they'd ferment more evenly. Others whispered apologies to their pickles before tasting them. You've done both. Don't judge. You sip barley tea and glance out at the yard. One of the servants is hanging sheets, the wind tossing them like ghosts. A pair of sparrows argue in the rafters. You close your eyes and pretend, for a moment, that this is peace. Then comes the real work of the day, staff training. You've got 3 new apprentices. 2 are promising. One thinks a radish is a turnip and tried to peel rice with a paring knife. You take a deep breath. You lead a tasting session. Everyone gathers around the low table. You pour a spoonful of soy broth into small wooden bowls and wait. Now, you say, tell me what it needs. The first one, Nobu, smells it, sips, and shrugs. More salt. You tilt your head. It's soy broth. He looks confused. The second, K, tastes, then brightens. It needs something bitter to balance the umami. You nod. Yes. Maybe a sliver of yuzu peel. Or kinome. Not too much. The third one, Jiro, the radish enthusiast, just stares into his bowl like it owes him money. Jiro, you say gently, what do you taste? He hesitates. Sadness? You cough to cover your laugh. That's not wrong. You assign them prep work. Kei gets greens. Nobu handles the fire. Jiro gets tasked with peeling boiled eggs, nothing sharp involved. Historians still argue whether household cooks held true authority or were more ceremonial figureheads. Some evidence suggests senior cooks in high-ranking homes had considerable power, not just in the kitchen but in shaping diplomatic meals. Others argue they were mostly servants with limited influence. You like to think you're somewhere in the middle. A humble artist. With a sharp knife. You test the tofu next. It's been pressed in cloth, weighted with a smooth river stone. The texture is perfect, creamy but firm. You slice it into squares and brush it lightly with soy and mirin, then set it to grill over low coals. The smell is faint, nutty, nostalgic. You remember your grandmother's kitchen, the taste of tofu seared in sesame oil and eaten with fingers still dusty from rice planting. One assistant watches closely. Do you ever get tired of cooking? You think for a moment. Then answer honestly, no. but I get tired of being watched." He laughs. You don't. Near dusk, a knock on the side door. A low-ranking messenger from a nearby temple has brought an offering, dried mushrooms and a bundle of strange roots. You bow politely and accept. Temples often shared ingredients they couldn't use, and in return, you sometimes sent leftovers. It was a quiet network of trade, held together by gratitude and mutual hunger. You decide to test the root later. You boil a tiny sliver and taste it. Earthy. Slightly sweet. Could be medicinal. Could be poison. You'll feed it to the chickens first. You end the day with rice gruel and pickled plum. Simple, soothing, safe. Your feet throb, your shoulders ache, and your hair smells like smoke, miso, and garlic. You wash your hands slowly, watching the water darken and swirl down the basin. The moon has risen, full and smug. Another day done. No lords. No disasters. Just training, tasting, tweaking. And yet, somehow, you're more tired than yesterday. Still, you smile. Because tomorrow, you'll do it again. And it will be better. You wake before the birds. Again. Not because you're noble. Because the rice must soak. It's still dark outside, the kind of dark that muffles sound and makes you question your life choices. Your fingers fumble in the cold water, swirling short-grain rice until it runs clear. The repetition is comforting, like spinning thoughts into silence. There's a storm coming, your knees say so, and the smoke from last night's hearth is slow to rise. You stoke the fire early, wrapping your hands around the belly of the iron kettle for warmth. Soon, the rest of the staff will rise like sleepy demons. But for now, you enjoy the hush. Breakfast today is simple, but still important. Lord Hoshino has taken up morning meditation, which means his stomach growls halfway through the chant. He swears he's above hunger. You're not so sure. So, you prepare a kanji rich enough to fuel a monk's patience, infused with ginger, garnished with roasted sesame, and topped with slivers of pickled burdock. It smells like comfort. Mainstream historical fact: samurai were expected to fast or restrict indulgence during religious observances or strategic retreats. But cooks like you often quietly bent those rules, adding nutritional ingredients to humble dishes so their lords could still fight or meditate without keeling over. You ladle the steaming rice gruel into clay bowls. One is thinner, intentionally, for the scribe, who claims his literary constitution can't handle thick porridge. You're 80% sure he's just picky. Then you prep for the mid-morning snack trays. This, oddly enough, is your favorite part of the day. Not because it's fancy, but because it's playful. You take small rice cakes and press patterns into them using carved wooden molds, cranes, turtles, plum blossoms. A few assistants bring you fresh mugwort, which you fold into the dough. The green color pops like spring grass. You shape bean paste into tiny balls and roll them in soybean flour. There's no fanfare to it. No noble guests. Just your hands, warm dough, and the quiet satisfaction of creating something small and perfect. Quirky tidbit: some elite kitchens had a snack master, yes, that was a real role, whose only job was to prepare tea-time delicacies and sweets. These weren't full meals, but they were crucial for impressing guests or bribing scribes. Your kitchen doesn't have one, which means you do it all. Naturally. Midday brings a small surprise. An unfamiliar samurai arrives, not with fanfare, but bearing a letter stamped with a phoenix crest. He's wet from rain, muddy boots, looking mildly offended by the existence of weather. The letter is sealed and smells faintly of sandalwood. You open it and scan the words, requesting a humble meal and quiet space to speak. It's signed by Lady Rin of House Hayashi. You blink. That's unexpected. She's not just a noble. She's a strategist, known for swordplay, ink-brush diplomacy, and allegedly stabbing a rival once, with a hairpin. Politely, of course. You send word to the Lord, then scramble. There's no time for elaborate fare. You pivot to your emergency meal strategy, something subtle, refined, and fast. You whip up zaru soba, cold buckwheat noodles served with a dipping sauce laced with grated daikon and green onion. It's clean, sharp, and elegant. Like her, you imagine. You toast sesame seeds over low flame, grind them to powder, and sprinkle just enough to suggest forethought. Then you brew the tea, genmaicha, earthy and grassy, with roasted rice to warm the bones. You serve her tray with care, no garnish overkill, no unnecessary flair. Just harmony on a plate. Historians still argue whether women like Lady Rin truly held influence behind the scenes or were merely figureheads. But you've seen the letters. You've cooked the meals. You've watched powerful men soften at the sound of her name. The tray disappears into the guest room. When it returns, it's spotless. Not a noodle left. Not a sesame seed. You take that as a compliment. Later, word comes, she wishes to send you a gift. You blink. A gift? 2 days later, it arrives, a lacquered box of dried persimmons from her estate. Hand-packed, tied with silk, and labeled in her own handwriting, for the hand that tempers fire and taste. You reread the note twice. Even the assistants are stunned. We should hang that in the kitchen. No, you say. We eat the persimmons. We burn the note. They gasp. You grin. I'm kidding. Mostly. Afternoon duties pull you back to earth. You lead a seasoning lesson. Today's topic, balance. You place 6 bowls on the table. Each contains miso, 1 too salty, 1 too weak, 1 fermented too long. Only one is perfect. Find it, you say. They taste. Kei picks the right one immediately. Jiro tries to dip bread in his. There is no bread, you say gently. Oh, he mutters, eyes down. Nobu chooses the overly salty one and says, this one tastes strong. Strong is good. You smile. Strong can kill a meal. You mix a 7th bowl yourself, using precise pinches and dashes. The color turns golden. The aroma rises like old memories. They taste it and fall quiet. This, you say, is how miso should whisper. They nod, still chewing. Evening brings rain, real, pounding rain. You prep comfort food, grilled eggplant glazed with miso and sake, soft rice steamed with chestnuts, and a clear broth with tofu and mountain greens. It's food for staying inside. Food for silence. Food that hugs you from the inside out. You tuck leftovers into bamboo boxes for the gate guards. No one sees. but you know they'll eat one tonight, and that matters. You sit by the hearth one last time, sipping tea made from roasted barley. Outside, the rain drums the roof in slow rhythm. You stare into the embers. Tomorrow will bring more lists, more trays, more taste tests and tiny disasters. But for now, you've earned this stillness. The rain has not stopped. It's been 2 days, and now the courtyard is a puddle deep enough to drown a stubborn carp. Your shoes squelch with every step. The kitchen roof leaks in 3 new places, and a bag of dried shiitake has sprouted mold like a shaggy dog. This is not ideal. Still, meals must be made. You start the morning with what you call storm breakfast, simple, warm, and made mostly from what hasn't turned to mush. Sweet rice porridge with chestnuts, a soft-boiled egg nestled in a bowl of broth, and pickled ginger for a flash of brightness. The kitchen staff eats together for once, huddled around the hearth like survivors of a minor war. A younger assistant asks, "Is it always like this in the rainy season?" You raise an eyebrow. "This is a nice rainy season." He goes quiet. You sip your tea and smile at the steam. Later, your lord sends a request, a midday meal with a mood of spring, despite the weather resembling the inside of a soggy boot. You resist the urge to shout spring isn't on the menu, my lord, and instead get to work. Mainstream historical fact, seasonal presentation was a major focus of elite samurai cuisine. Even if ingredients had to be dried or pickled months in advance, the illusion of harmony with nature was everything. Serving something out of season could be seen as either offensive or ignorant, sometimes both. You raid your hidden stash of preserved cherry blossom leaves. You pickle them yourself each spring and wrap them tight in bamboo to sleep until needed. Today, they wake. You fold one into each rice cake, turning simple sweets into poetry. You steam fish with sansho pepper and layer it over radish cut like flower petals. It's not spring, but it tastes close enough to fool a homesick poet. And there is a poet. Of course. He's an old friend of your lord's, always appearing during bad weather with a scroll under one arm and no idea how kitchens work. He once asked you if tofu grew on trees. You've never forgiven him. Today, he tastes the meal and murmurs something about moonlight on puddles. You resist the urge to ask if his brain is also damp. Still, he bows and says it's the finest meal he's had in weeks. You thank him with the politeness of someone imagining him falling into a koi pond. Quirky tidbit, some samurai homes kept rain scrolls, poems written only during storms and read aloud with specific foods. You once had to design a full meal around a haiku that compared lightning to a drunken cat. You are still recovering. Mid-afternoon, the storm knocks out a support beam in the outer kitchen wall. The entire pantry shudders. You bark orders, grab rope, and personally help brace the shelves while assistants scramble to move the pickles. It's controlled chaos. A bag of barley splits open across the floor. "Leave it," you shout. "We'll sweep it later. Focus on the crock of daikon." Nobu, bless him, cradles the giant crock like it's a baby, waddling it to safety while muttering, "Please don't explode." You do a head count. Everyone's intact. Even the pickles survive. Later, soaked and sore, you sit down with the staff and open one of your precious sweet potatoes, baked whole in the hearth ashes. The caramelized scent fills the room. You tear it open and share pieces around. No words. Just warm mouths, quiet chewing, and the deep, shared relief of nothing breaking this time. Historians still argue whether lower-ranking kitchen staff received regular food or ate scraps. Some accounts paint a picture of communal meals and shared labor. Others suggest rigid hierarchies, where only head cooks and officers dined properly. In your kitchen, everyone eats when the roof nearly collapses. That's just good policy. After nightfall, a servant appears with a tiny bundle from a neighboring household, Lord Oda's, no less. Wrapped in silk is a single duck egg, painted with gold lacquer and accompanied by a message, challenge, prepare this by tomorrow for our Lord, in a way he's never tasted. You stare at the egg. Then the message. Then back at the egg. Is this a joke? The servant shrugs. He smiled when he sent it. You hate that. You gather your assistants and brainstorm. Boiled? Too basic. Pickled? Too slow. Fried? Done before. Smoked, maybe? Jiro suggests, what if we bury it for a week? You nod slowly. Yes, and serve it to Lord Oda next season. In a poison testing ceremony. He blinks. That's not what I meant. You laugh. Then stop. No, really, keep thinking. You land on an idea, a soy mirin glaze, gently torched over a nest of rice noodles infused with yuzu. A dusting of sansho ash over the yolk. It's theatrical. It's risky. It might be amazing. You prep a test egg. The glaze bubbles perfectly. The yolk thickens like custard. You taste it and smile. This, you say, tastes like revenge in springtime. Even Kay claps. You'll make it again tomorrow. For now, you note everything, sketch it, log it, and wrap the golden egg back in its cloth. Let Lord Oda wonder what you'll do. The rain quiets around midnight. You lie on the kitchen floor with a rolled-up cloth under your neck, listening to dripping water and snoring assistants. The fire crackles nearby. Your stomach is full, your notes are written, and for the first time in 3 days, your feet are dry. You whisper, to no one in particular, let it be sunny tomorrow. And if it's not, you'll cook anyway. Sunlight, actual, honest sunlight, bleeds through the paper screens. You blink. It's almost suspicious. You open the side door to the courtyard and stare in disbelief as golden light hits puddles like a divine spotlight. A bird chirps. Somewhere in the distance, a carp jumps like it's performing just for you. You do not trust this. Still, the kitchen breathes easier in dry air. You throw open shutters and lift baskets of herbs and pickled plums to the roof to dry. The crew follows suit, laying out salt clumps, miso barrels, and last week's mushrooms that now smell, debatably edible. Smells like warrior socks, Jiro offers helpfully. You'd know, you reply without looking up. With the good weather comes a formal dinner request. Lord Hoshino is hosting Lord Oda this evening, yes, that Lord Oda, of the Golden Egg Challenge, and the meal must impress without appearing to try too hard. This is not a festival, your lord reminds you. It must show refinement and subtle mastery. You smile through your teeth and bow. Subtle mastery. Got it. Mainstream historical fact. The late Sengoku and early Edo periods saw the rise of kaiseki, multi-course meals that began in tea ceremonies and evolved into elaborate displays of taste, season, and etiquette. Kaiseki wasn't just food. It was a structured, poetic experience. The samurai elite didn't just eat, they performed their appetites like actors on a private stage. So, you plan your performance. First, the sakizuke, an appetizer meant to set the tone. You choose chilled tofu cubes marinated in citrus soy and garnished with finely grated yuzu peel. Clean. Minimal. A polite hello. Next, the mukozuke, the sashimi course. You select the freshest river trout, caught just before sunrise, sliced paper thin, and served over shiso leaves with a dab of wasabi and a stroke of soy-brushed radish. Then the namono, simmered dish. Here, you shine. You slow-cook daikon, lotus root, and burdock in a broth flavored with kelp and dried bonito, folding in grilled eel just before serving. The scent alone could convince a monk to break his vow. Each course builds. You fold in rice steamed with young bamboo shoots, a grilled mountain yam skewer glazed in plum paste, and a small miso soup enriched with enoki mushrooms and wild greens. For the palate cleanser, pickled sansho buds with cucumber ribbons, and a sip of barley tea. Finally, the mizumono, dessert. You craft a translucent jelly of cherry blossom and plum wine, set in tiny wooden cups chilled in river stones. Kay peeks at the tray. This looks like a rich person's dream. You nod. Let's hope it doesn't become a cook's nightmare. Quirky tidbit, kaiseki meals were sometimes so long and intricate that guests were encouraged to pace themselves, unless the host was using food to test someone's patience or manners. Yes, weaponized fine dining. In some cases, a guest's reaction to bitter tea or raw sea cucumber could determine whether they'd be trusted with political secrets. You prep the golden egg for Lord Oda's surprise dish, a twist on what you tested earlier. This time, you poach it in dashi broth until the yolk reaches that perfect custard stage, then serve it floating in a clear bowl over soba wrapped like a bird's nest. A single chrysanthemum petal rests on top. It is quiet poetry in protein form. As the guests arrive, the kitchen holds its breath. You peek through a screen and see Lord Oda's expression as each course arrives. He's unreadable, like trying to interpret a rock. You watch him lift a tofu cube, smell it, pause, then eat. He nods once. Progress. He picks up the poached egg last, studies it, then cracks a rare smile. He eats it in 2 bites. Then says, just loud enough to be heard, unexpected. You exhale. Later, his servant returns the empty tray with a tiny note folded like a crane. Inside, 1 brush stroke. A circle. No signature. You pass the note to your assistants. Jiro frowns. What does that mean? You grin. Perfection, or possibly nothing. It's very fancy either way. The night winds down. You're invited, rarely, but today, to sit at the edge of the great hall and listen as the lords talk. They don't acknowledge you. But the scent of your food still lingers in the air, and their laughter is softer than usual. You catch phrases, balance, honor, old mountain roads, chrysanthemums and war. Historians still argue whether cooks ever influenced political meetings. There's no direct record of a chef swaying policy. But sometimes, a shared meal ends a feud. Sometimes, silence over soup means trust. You'll take that. Later, you clean in the moonlight. The courtyard reflects stars in shallow puddles. Kei and Nobu scrub pans beside you, trading theories about Lord Oda's cryptic note. Jiro hums an off-key song about pickles and doomed love. Even you hum along for once. You pull out your private stash of roasted chestnuts, split among the four of you, and munch slowly. Think they'll invite us to Kyoto next? Kei jokes. You stretch. If we're lucky, maybe we'll just get tomorrow off. They cheer, too soon. Because right then, a boy runs in with a scroll. Message from the outer provinces. Guests arriving by dawn. Of course. You sigh. Well, no time for laundry. But somehow, you smile. Your hands ache. Your feet throb. Your brain is already sketching a menu. But your heart? Your heart is full. Because for just a few hours today, your cooking held the world together. The guests arrive with the sunrise. Literally. You hear the horses before you see the people, hooves pounding like a drumroll across the muddy road. By the time they dismount, you've already started the fire, boiled water, and bribed Nobu with 2 pickled plums to keep quiet about the fact that none of you actually slept. The visitors are from the western mountains, retainers of a local warlord, sharp-eyed and polite, with travel-creased robes and the kind of hunger you can feel before anyone says a word. Their leader hands over a scroll, bowed with courtesy but lips pressed tight. Something's up. The scroll reads, "Prepare a morning meal for warriors on the edge. Keep it humble, keep it strong." Your spine straightens. Not just because of the challenge, but because this kind of food matters. This isn't for flattery. This is fuel for people about to do something hard. Mainstream historical fact, before campaigns or long travel, samurai and their entourages often requested what was called Senjin Ryuri, pre-battle meals. These meals were hearty, restorative, and packed with ingredients meant to give long-lasting energy: millet, barley, root vegetables, dried fish, and pickled condiments for stamina and balance. You call for miso, brown rice, fermented radish, and the fatty pieces of dried salmon you saved for just such an occasion. The meal is plain, yes, but every bite will last in their bones. You poach eggs and float them in a thick broth, earthy and dark. You boil root vegetables with burdock and miso, and add a handful of wild greens, bitter, but blood-cleansing. The rice is mixed with millet for slow-release energy. Can I add pickles shaped like flowers? Kei asks, hopeful. You nod. Warriors need morale, too. Quirky tidbit: some samurai believed certain vegetables could spiritually ground them before a battle. Burdock root, for example, was thought to strengthen the body and soul, while avoiding garlic kept the spirit from overheating. It's not official doctrine, but you've seen warriors go without onions like it's a sin. You arrange the trays simply: no gold, no lacquer, just good cedar and clean cloths. When the warriors eat, they do so in complete silence. But one by one, they nod. One lifts his bowl after finishing and softly says, "This is the taste of home." It's the highest praise you could hope for. After they leave, your kitchen slumps. You've made festival feasts, tricksy poetic dinners, and once a 12-course meal for a tea master who cried over the soup. But somehow, this plain, honest breakfast feels like the most important thing you've done. Then your lord surprises you. He enters the kitchen. You've worked here for years, and this has maybe happened twice. Everyone scrambles to stand straighter, but he waves it off. He bows to you. I watched those men eat, he says. And I remembered a winter, long ago, when I was the one traveling. I had a meal like that once. I never forgot it. You swallow hard. The room is so quiet you can hear Kay stop breathing. You remind us, he says, that food is not just ceremony or art, but memory. You want to thank him. Instead, you nod. It's enough. Historians still argue whether samurai ever formally recognized their cooks as integral to their household strength. Most records are silent. Cooks appear in passing, if at all. But you know. And every scraped bowl and returned tray whispers the truth. Your work carries weight. Even if no one writes your name down. Later, the kitchen settles. You let everyone sleep in shifts, and for the first time in weeks, you take a moment alone. You slip into the garden behind the storehouse and sit on the worn stone bench. A beetle crawls across your foot. You don't even flinch. You think of all the hands that touched this place before yours, other cooks, long gone. You wonder if they ever dreamed of being remembered. You wonder if they ever felt proud, just for getting through the day. You close your eyes. The sun warms your face. The wind smells like miso and charred fish and plum blossoms. Distant laughter rolls from the staff quarters. And you breathe. You made it. You're the samurai's cook. And tomorrow? You'll do it all again. So now, as the last embers of the kitchen fire fade into ash, let yourself imagine lying there on that cool wooden floor, the scent of soy and cedar still clinging to your sleeves. Your body aches in that good, honest way that only comes from a day spent feeding others. Not for glory, not for thanks, but because someone had to do it, and it was you. Out in the distance, a lone night bird sings low. The garden creaks with wind, the trees sigh with old age, and the stars blink overhead like they're checking in, just for a moment. You're wrapped in the hush of a quiet night after too much noise, and everything in your bones says, rest. The cooking fire has gone out. The blades are cleaned and put away. The pantry is sealed tight. And all those hundreds of tiny decisions, from how thick to slice a radish to whether to serve warm pickles instead of cold, are finally behind you. You did well. Let the warmth of the kitchen follow you into your dreams. Let the rhythm of chopping vegetables, the hiss of miso broth boiling over, the low laughter of your kitchen crew, all of it, rock you gently to sleep like waves lapping against a wooden boat. Close your eyes. You're safe. You're full. And you are remembered.